All right. So, welcome again to everybody. Thank you so much for joining us virtually this morning. My name is Hala Alawi, and on behalf of Atmosphere Press, I am so pleased to welcome you to Cultural Impacts, an event featuring new releases that explore cultural phenomena through literature. Today, we will hear from Amy J. Schultz, reading from *Momentous*, original photos and mostly true stories about football, glue guns, moms, and a supersized high school tradition that was born deep in the heart of Texas. A photo book released April 25th, 2023. Oops. Vincent J. Tomeo, reading from *The Usefulness of Hippopotamus*, a humorous chapbook for trying times, a poetry collection released April 26th, 2023, and Susan Dormady Eisenberg, reading from *One More Seat at the Round Table*, a novel released May 18th, 2023. All three authors' books can be purchased both from online retailers and from select bookstores. And of course, the books can be ordered on Atmosphere Press's website at atmospherepress.com/books. And I will drop some links in the chat for you. At the end of this event, we will have time for audience questions. So during the readings, if you have a question for one or more of our authors, go ahead and type it in the chat and I will make sure it gets asked. And then during the actual reading itself, please stay muted to keep extraneous sound at a minimum. Of course, you can always feel free to use that chat for praise and comments that you'd like to share. And one last note, we at Atmosphere Press appreciate your support today and always. So if you have a manuscript of your own, we'd love to read it. And feel free to submit your work to books@atmospherepress.com. With that, thank you again so much for tuning in and supporting Amy, Vincent, and Susan this morning. And let's go ahead and start off with our first reader, who is Amy J. Schultz. Amy is an author and award-winning photographer who explores unique aspects of modern culture that hide in plain sight. Amy and her husband Brian live in Texas with their gigantic golden retriever, Bentley. When she isn't talking about homecoming mums, Amy is writing, taking photos, working with clients on creative projects, traveling, snort laughing, or vacuuming up dog fur. *Momentous* is Amy's first published book, which was nurtured during her tenure as artist in residence at the Arlington Museum of Art in Arlington, Texas. Find more at www.momentousbook.com. *Momentous* is a book featuring Amy's photography that explores the cultural impact of mums and mum making in Texas. As Amy describes, the closest you'll ever get to seeing someone actually wear their hearts on their sleeves is in Texas every fall with the local high school homecoming game. They're called homecoming mums. They are as bodacious as football, as irresistible as a juicy rumor, and as deep as a mama's love. Today, I will be screen sharing the photos in Amy's book while she reads, so you all can enjoy the photographs accompanying her reading. So with that, let's hear from Amy now.
Thank you so much. First of all, I have to say hi to friends and family who joined from near and far. Literally no one in Texas, I don't think. So I'm just really thrilled to see my sister and my friends and my aunt and all kinds of wonderful people who decided to join me in the middle of their busy day. So thank you so much. Oh my gosh, I just saw in your chat, Hala, did you see that?
Let's see. Oh, wow. Yeah, all over the world to enjoy and appreciate the cultural impact of mums.
Amazing. Yes. And the other authors' wonderful stories too. So I'm going to read 2 chapters and sort of an excerpt, a third. And I've never done this before, y'all. Since I'm a new author, I'm learning all kinds of things, including how to read and make eye contact at the same time. So don't judge. I'll do my best. So I'm going to start with chapter 1, because where else would you start except chapter 1? And that chapter is called Soundtrack. The humidity pushed down on the football stadium that homecoming night, capping and coagulating the din rising from the student section. Each individual sound, movement, and breath taken seemed to stick together in the atmosphere, forming a singular dense mass of joyful disharmonies. I love it. When I'm in a big crowd like this one, I play a game my mom taught me back when I was a wiggly child sitting next to her at a concert. First, she told me, find the sound of one instrument. The trumpet maybe, or the piano. Listen to its melody until you can follow its story. Once understood, open up your eardrums just a little in search of a complementary tone. Try to add a third, then a fourth. Take care you don't add too many storylines at once so that the first ones disappear back into the murk, because every instrument is equally important. As I applied her game to the homecoming-related chatter around me, there were so many harmonic stories from which to choose. The person sitting next to me talking on his phone, the person sitting on the other side of me hollering missed penalties at the top of her lungs, the huddle of teenagers laughing hysterically at a terrible joke, a high school marching band rotating through their set list, organized chanting from the cheerleading squad, and disorganized responses from the 30 or so students in the stands facing them. Samples of buzzers, play commentary, and sponsor announcements as players shouted plays at each other and catcalls at their opponents. Coaches screaming red-faced. An occasional referee whistling the end of the play. Feet pounding out tremors from the shaky bleachers below. I was 17 when I last took in the spectacle of a high school homecoming football game. It was also the last time I wore a homecoming corsage, which in my home state of Florida consisted of a perfunctory live chrysanthemum flower and a few ribbons in school colors. But now, well into the next millennium, I was in Texas, a place where everything is bigger is a motto and a call to action. To say that Texas high school homecoming corsages, aka mums, are supersized would be a pitiful understatement. A Texas homecoming mom precedes you with the power of a juicy rumor. Just then at the game, I heard giggles from a clatch of bemummed girls. I've been dying to try on a Texas homecoming mom, and the bigger the better. I made my move. A willing senior offered hers to me for a few precious minutes. As she lifted her mom over my head, I braced myself. The front of this senior's mom consisted of about 20 artificial chrysanthemums at its core and an explosion of ribbons and decorations extending every direction. The back of the mum was a large piece of cardboard backing to which everything had been glued and stapled. Affixed to the mum's backing was an industrial strength ribbon that secured the mum to my body. The ribbon pinched the back of my neck as the mum landed on my shoulders, then settled into place. I took an involuntary step to steady myself. When you're enveloped in a mum of this size, there's no direction to go but forward. As I found my footing to steer all three of my dimensions, the mum audibly cheered me on, because woven into it was a waterfall of sleigh bells and cowbells. With every step, twist, and gesture, the bells involuntarily created a manic and discordant melody. As I swept by the fans sitting in the bleachers nearby, I felt like the homecoming queen and her parade float combined. Even though my body was barely visible, there was nothing about me that felt hidden. I was outrageously conspicuous and totally emboldened. The senior started to get antsy, so I returned her mum to its rightful perch. Instantly, I lost 20 pounds. My skin welcomed back the evening breeze. As she and her friends walked away, laughing hysterically, I noticed how their mum songs were completely unlike any other sound in the stadium. Given the ambient decibel level, that was something. The mums defied them all. They were outrageously conspicuous and totally emboldened, just like a teenager making a big noise in our big, noisy world. On to chapter 20, which I will be excerpting to some degree if you're following along, if you have the book. And this chapter is called Till Death Do Us Part. On my journey to mum enlightenment, I visited a few homecoming mum wholesalers and specialty retailers in Texas and Oklahoma. I don't know how many of these businesses exist. Likely more than dozens, but probably not hundreds. Where one does exist, it is the mum mecca of the region. A supplier that specializes in mum accoutrements will draw amateur and professional mum makers by the droves during homecoming season, then spend the rest of the year preparing to do it all over again. The mum mecca in my neck of Texas was founded in the 1970s by a husband and wife team. They began their business by dabbling in closeout merchandise sales. Over the years, they took it full-time and homed in on party supplies, wedding decor, and artificial flowers. But what set them apart was a no-holds-barred approach to high school traditions. Because the couple was involved in every sports booster program in their one high school town, the wife draped her kids in handmade homecoming mums practically from birth. She understood the staying power of artificial flowers, not just as wearable art, but as keepsakes. She also understood the power of an enthusiastic mother, because she was one. Driven by her give me a hug personality, she turned her propensity to floral design into a talent, turned talent into part of the business, and then turned that business into a statewide mission. Along the way, she drew fans from near and far, although to her, they were just part of the extended family. Before she passed away in the mid-2010s, she had become something of a mom celebrity, certainly within the region and quite possibly the entire state. Today, under the leadership of the couple's children, the business model now consists of an enormous retail space jam-packed with sparkly and fluffy things, wholesaler services, an online store, and several off-site shipping containers full of back inventory. They still sell wedding and party supplies, but their claim to fame and much of their square footage is all about the mums. Quote, "Mums are in a constant state of what's next," said the founder's daughter, who knowingly moved through the aisles of her 20,000 square foot store like I walk through my kitchen at home. The crushing number of options in each aisle was madness to a window shopper like me. But to a serious customer, it's all method. Everything was organized by product type, then color, then high school. For those intimidated by a blank slate, pre-braided ribbons and pre-assembled basic mums were available in every imaginable color combination, primed and ready for personalization. I stopped to consider the myriad staff hours that went into all that braiding, hot gluing, and assembling. And because there's no room at ground level, these prefab mums hung above every aisle like clouds dripping feather boas. Back on the floor, as we stood in front of bins upon bins full with unadorned silk mums, the daughter picked out two to demonstrate that one was slightly larger than the other. They were both white and they looked identical to me, so I took her word for it. She then flipped them over and I saw an obvious difference between their green plastic stems. She explained there's slight variations between the petals, but the stem was the only foolproof way to tell them apart. Variations in stems were her idea, and after years of tenacious nudging, the manufacturers in China acquiesced. The store, I suspect, is full of these little innovations. As she and I walked from the sales floor to the break room, she collected several finished samples from around the store for me to photograph. Each had a theme carried out to epic proportions, ranging from princesses to angels to shabby chic to cowboy. The more fully developed the theme, the less it appeared to have anything to do with homecoming, football, or school spirit. With samples in hand, she and I crossed the threshold into the break room. Gray lockers lined one wall. Stacks of cardboard boxes leaned against another. Small table and chairs waited for the next employee to take a lunch break. And hung high on the back wall, encased in glass and particularly aglow with a liturgical white and silver, was the most ethereal mum I had ever seen. Quote, "That's Mom's funeral mum," she said. I instantly missed my mother, who had died about 2 years before hers. My mom was the utter antithesis of this mum. My mom was practical, petite, and understated. Nothing about this mom should have reminded me of her, though I did wonder what she'd think about it. There was no taking this mom back to prune it. Other than her wedding rings, my mom rarely wore jewelry, but she owned a few sentimental pieces. My favorite was her charm bracelet. The bracelet itself was a simple chain with large links, and the idea was that over the years, she'd add a charm in honor of a special occasion or memory. In her day, keeping a charm bracelet was an activity that women passed down to their daughters. My 3 sisters and I all have charm bracelets. Because a fully realized charm bracelet like hers was enormous and noisy, Mom only wore hers to church on Mother's Day. She and I would sit side by side, and while she listened to the sermon, I would gently spin the bracelet to travel back in time. There were Mickey Mouse ears from our trip to Disney World, shapes of every state that she had lived in, and then a tiny golf club, 4 silhouettes engraved with her daughter's birth dates, a miniature Liberty Bell with an active clacker, and so much more. My mom, a woman who never wore her emotions on her sleeve, wore her gaudy, beautiful charm bracelet once a year on Mother's Day, just like girls and boys wear their gaudy, beautiful moms once a year on their special day. I began to tear up as I made the connection. Like it was yesterday, I remembered how on Mother's Day, Mom would proudly jingle jangle the tune of her life for everyone to hear. Meanwhile, around the church and across the country, women from all walks of life celebrated and were being celebrated because they were just like her in at least one particularly significant way. Sort of like homecoming. It's all about me and it's all about us. I lifted my eyes back up to the funeral mom created in honor of, arguably, one of the matriarchs of the entire homecoming mom industry. I imagined all the care that went into creating it and the fullness of a life lived in a loving community of family and friends, the shimmer of a joyful disposition, the embellishments of fond memories, the practical fly by the seat of your pants apparatus behind the scenes that holds it all together. Sort of like home. It's all about me and it's all about us. Okay, I'm going to ask Kayla if I have time to read the last chapter I've selected, which is just a couple pages, and it's called The Florist. How are we doing?
Yeah, go right ahead.
Okay, great. The Florist. And I will say before I read this chapter, as I collected stories from Texans across the state, this is one of the first stories that I collected along the way. And I didn't know I was going to collect it because collecting stories really just starts with a conversation and then suddenly it turns into something else. So that's why I chose this story, because this is one of the first that someone shared with me that truly surprised me. Okay, again, it's called The Florist. In 1963, when she was 16, the self-proclaimed small-town Texas girl got her first part-time job in the local flower shop. It was the only florist in town, so in many ways, it was the herald of the community. Their floral arrangements welcomed new babies to the world, mourned with family and friends at every funeral service, celebrated every blushing bride, and adorned every homecoming lapel. She had worked at the florist for a couple of months before the orders for homecoming flowers started coming in. When her boyfriend came in to order her mom, she giggled as she waited on him. She made his boutonniere herself. Ultimately, there would be hundreds of corsages and boutonnieres, and all had to be ready for pickup on the exact same Friday. To keep the flowers and ribbons pristine before boxing them, the staff carefully hooked each completed corsage on wires suspended like a clothesline over their heads. Stretching across the room from wall to wall, the corsages created a botanical drop ceiling. It was magical. As they swayed from the gentle nudging of oscillating fans, the workshop looked and smelled like something out of a fairy tale. The staff arrived early that November morning to prepare for the rush of customers picking up their orders that day. She'll never forget that day. Quote, President Kennedy was shot just after noon, she recalled. Even though it happened in Dallas, it felt to us like it happened just up the road. All homecoming activities were canceled. Everything everywhere was canceled. We shut off the fans, turned off the lights, closed up shop, and went home to mourn. And there in the shop, those mums hung there all weekend, motionless, just like us. She stood before me, utterly modern, yet frozen in time. A few years after JFK died, she married her high school boyfriend, and together they bought that flower shop. For generations, they adorned teenagers in flowers for proms, graduations, Sweet 16 parties, quinceañera celebrations, Cinderella balls, cotillions, and homecomings, until slowly, and with melancholy resignation, they gave up trying to keep up with all the home-based mum makers with no overhead and profit margins they couldn't hope to match. After her husband's passing a decade ago, she has continued to run the store on her own. All told, she has been in the floral business for over 50 years. And except for the heartbreaking decision to give up homecoming mums, she never once strayed from the primary lesson she learned early on. Be there for the moments that matter. Thank you guys so much for the opportunity to share bits of my momentous journey with you. I hope you enjoyed them.
Thank you, Amy. I mean, we can see it in the chat, but I think just your use of language in tandem with the photographs, it really creates this experience like we're there seeing it all happen alongside you and alongside everyone in Texas participating in the tradition.
Thank you.
Of course. All right, so reading up next is going to be Susan Dormady Eisenberg. Susan began her career as a publicist, marketer for Goodspeed Opera House, Syracuse Stage, and the Joffrey Ballet. She formed a promotional writing company in Washington, D.C., creating business publications, and published articles in Classical Singer, HuffPost, and Opera News. Proud member of the Authors Guild, Susan released her first backstage novel, The Voice I Just Heard, in 2012. Based in Maryland, she's drafting her third novel about American icon Annie Oakley. But today we will hear from Susan's second novel, One More Seat at the Round Table, which is set backstage during the out-of-town chaos of Lerner and Loewe's now classic 1960 musical, Camelot, which is now enjoying a revival on Broadway today, a testament to the musical's impact on the theater world for sure. One More Seat at the Round Table portrays the struggles of feisty drama school grad Jane Conroy, who lands a plum Gal Friday job, and Bryce Christmas, a gifted, if insecure, actor on the verge of his big break. Susan, you're on.
Thank you. I have to say thank you to Hala for all she's done for me during the last few weeks, and also to all of you who are here today, and especially my family and friends. Without you, I wouldn't be writing at all, so I'm deeply grateful to you for your support. It really takes a village. And as I was listening to Amy, who did such a beautiful job, I was recalling that when Richard Burton was doing Camelot, Richard Burton, who played King Arthur, he got so nervous that he would peer through the curtain at the audience as they filed in, and he would curse them. And then he would go and sit in a tree and wait to meet Guinevere. Well, please know that I'm not cursing you, I'm thanking you for being here, but I do find it interesting that he was that nervous. I am going to read from the first chapter of One More Seat at the Round Table. It's a comic romp. My protagonist, Jane, will be front and center. In the first part, she'll meet a man, Bryce Christmas, who will play a very big role in her life later on. In the second part, Jane will have an interview to join the production staff of Camelot. Her future boss will be Brock Remsen, Alan Lerner's right arm. He went to school with Jane's Uncle Max, who sent Brock Jane's resume. You just need to know this. I'll also mention Emily, Jane's current boss, a literary agent, and Father Gilbert Hartke, head of the drama department at Catholic University, where Jane went to school. The setting is New York City, first 1958, then 1960. And again, many thanks and congrats to Amy on her beautiful book. I really enjoyed that reading. Chapter 1, Two Big Breaks, Jane. I don't have psychic powers, but at various times in my life, I felt a prickle along my neck when something big was about to happen. Although such moments have been rare, I had one that late August day in 1958 as I whirled through the revolving door of the Hotel Piccadilly coffee shop on West 45th Street. Bathed in sweat after a long trek from Murray Hill, I claimed a wobbly table and grabbed a few napkins from the dispenser to wipe my face. Then I removed my straw hat and white gloves, which proper ladies wore back then, and glanced at the menu I knew by heart. I'd come here once a week since July, and the joint was filling up with tourists and regulars, most of them chatting in pairs. But everything seemed normal, and I had to wonder if my neck barb had come not from a moment of prescience, but from the baking heat of summer in New York. The Piccadilly was in the heart of the bustling theater district, and its coffee shop was the one place I felt at ease in my adopted city. I'd read somewhere that most Broadway producers lunched elsewhere, Sardi's or Cafe Edison, but on different days, I'd spotted David Merrick with his shaving brush mustache and skinny Hal Prince on the red top stools at the counter. And since those two guys had hits on Broadway, I longed to hand them my resume, which I carried in a black coat shoulder bag, a graduation gift from my parents. Having landed here in June with a newly minted drama degree, I hoped to snag a theater job, but so far had only found the nerve to send out letters. Would producers get irked if I interrupted their meal? Or would they praise my chutzpah, a Yiddish word I'd recently learned? I didn't know, but neither Merrick nor Prince had looked approachable, so my courage took a powder. When a scowling waitress with iodine-tinted hair lumbered over, I ordered ham on rye and a Coke, no ice. Feeling famished, I always skipped breakfast. I craved a side of fries, but it was hard to make it on a junior secretary's pay, so thrift was essential. Yet while this shop cost more than the coffee shop at the Barbizon, the women's hotel I'd chosen to please my folks, I never tired of its crowded, noisy atmosphere. Then after lunch each week, I strolled the narrow streets of the 40s, browsing theater marquees and display cases as another girl, one who liked clothes and jewelry, might window shop on Fifth Avenue. My passion was Broadway, and it still amazed me that I lived in a town where plays and musicals were performed every night. The waitress brought my Coke in a tall glass brimming with ice, and it was clear she hadn't heard my request over the din. The shop was getting full, and for some reason, I missed my college roommate, Sarah Wilkins, an aspiring singer-actress who should have been auditioning for the fall season. Sadly, Sarah's parents had whisked her home after graduation and made her take a job in a bakery in Albany. "It smells so sweet in there, I get headaches," she'd groused in a recent letter, "but I'm squirreling away every dollar and will join you at the Barbizon soon." Reading my friend's wistful words, I felt glad I'd banked my birthday checks from relatives for the last decade. I'd used my savings to relocate from Maryland and pay my bills while searching for work. Of course, Sarah's inability to plan was part of her charm, and I missed her spontaneity. Who could forget the time the waitress slapped my sandwich on the scarred wooden tabletop along with the check, wrenching me back to the present. I took a demure bite of ham while watching a tall 30-ish man slide onto a stool at the counter. He was pressed and starched with dark wavy hair and might have been an ad exec or stockbroker, too well built for a model. But he carried a light green canvas messenger bag instead of a briefcase. And from his straight posture and melodic voice, I strained to hear him order. I guessed he was an actor and maybe a singer. My waitress with the orange hair promptly brought the guy's burger and fries, grinning at him with dingy dentures, and I chuckled at the woman's lame attempt to flirt. While the actor drenched his food in Red Wing ketchup, the off-brand the Piccadilly served, I decided he was a looker, at least from this angle. After wolfing down my sandwich and tossing coins on the table, I grabbed my hat and gloves and walked to the door, where a playful impulse stopped me. Instead of leaving, I turned and zinged the guy with my best smile. And unlike the waitress, I had nice teeth. By dumb luck, he was looking my way, and as our eyes met, he returned my smile, flashing nicer teeth than mine. In that instant, I knew why he drew me like a magnet. Everything about him told me he belonged here. He wasn't a newcomer like me or a visitor from the hinterlands. Theater was in his marrow, and I yearned to ask him how that felt. But I lost my chutzpah, just like with the producers, and raced out the door, my floral dress swirling around my now squishy knees. His smile had unstitched me. I fled down 45th Street, passing the Plymouth and Golden Theaters, swerving left at 8th Avenue, then skirting the Manhattan Hotel and turning up 44th. As I hurried along this fabled block, passing the Majestic Theater and Sardi's restaurant, I realized I'd never flirted with a stranger before. And I had to wonder if my telltale prickle had been about him. Lordy Jane, get a grip. By the time I reached Broadway with its camera-toting tourists and yellow cabs careening in and out of lanes, I put the actor, if he was an actor, out of my mind. As the traffic light changed, I ignored the pulsing neon signs above Times Square and dashed through the crosswalk with the other pedestrians. Then I raced up 44th like the Roadrunner in those movie house cartoons. If I made a beeline to my office, I might reach my desk before my boss, a fiend for punctuality, left her tidy inner sanctum and noticed I was late getting back from lunch. And now Jane has an interview with Alan Lerner's right arm, gotten by, again, her Uncle Max. It turned out Brock Remsen already had a crack assistant, but Max continued to sing my praises throughout the next year, which was why on a sunny Monday in July of 1960, I found myself in a rehearsal hall foyer in the West 40s, surrounded by singers and dancers. Their sweat smelled like fear, but unlike those chorus hopefuls known to theater folk as gypsies, I was waiting to see the assistant to the producers. I told Emily what I was up to. She seemed disappointed and asked for the day off. Before leaving the Barbizon, I pulled my reddish-brown hair into a chignon and donned a houndstooth Chanel jacket from a vintage clothing shop, a white blouse whose Peter Pan collar I'd managed to scorch, and a gray flared skirt with black pumps. I'd added black frames over my blue eyes, and when I checked myself in the mirror, I was a slim 5'6". I felt satisfied. "You're Max's niece," Brock Remsen said as he ushered me into the rectangular studio with metal tables and chairs along the wall. Several men were already seated, but not wishing to appear nosy, I stared at the floor. Yet when Mr. Remsen pointed to an empty table, I slid onto a folding chair, and he sat across from me. "Your uncle's always been proud of you." "Thanks for telling me," I said, flattered by his praise. "I gather you and he went to school together." Getting a closer look, I definitely would have taken Mr. Remsen for ex-military. He was tall and trim with a silver crew cut and had to be in his 40s like Max. The one theatrical touch was a silver goatee that my uncle would have thought too flamboyant. "We played football together in college," Mr. Remsen went on. "I quit the service after the war, but your uncle stayed on. He's done rather well for himself." I smiled. My uncle had done rather well, all right. He was the Undersecretary of the Navy. "Max may lose his post if Nixon loses the election," I muttered. "Well, Lerner tells me his Harvard classmate, the junior senator from Massachusetts, will be our next president. I'm a political dunce and have no idea where he gets his info." With a shrug, he said, "My assistant left me high and dry. And since Max sent me your resume last year, I phoned Gilbert Hartke." He leaned back as someone played a lilting tune on the piano. "Was that from the score?" I nearly swooned at the idea of hearing new music by Frederick Lowe. "Hartke thinks you're aces at detail work," Mr. Remsen continued, "which is what I need. Someone who'll help me keep track of script revisions. Changes come like lightning once we're out of town. I need a person who's compulsive. I love detail work. The more changes, the better. During rehearsals, you'll mainly run errands, but there will be other tasks too." Brock Remsen looked me in the eye. "You're not applying for this job to meet famous actors, are you?" No, that idea hadn't occurred to me. "Good," he said with a chuckle. My assistant has to stay as neutral as Switzerland before you can say Merlin will be putting out fires in the dressing rooms." "Well, I once put out a dorm fire. Nothing to it." "Splendid. You're my new gal Friday. You'll start here a week from Monday at 10 a.m. for sharp. For now, go to Jenny Productions at 120 East 56th and see our administrator. She'll talk to you about salary, employment policies, and all that good stuff." "Don't you want to know about my typing?" I asked when my future boss stood. "Kiddo, if you can type slow with 2 fingers, that's all I need," he said, extending his hands. "Welcome to Camelot. That's the name of our show." "Isn't it Jenny Kissed Me?" Alas, that name was already used by Jean Kerr. "Care to read Lerner's book?" "Are you kidding? I'd love to." "Here," he said, handing me a script bound in soft leather. On the cover, stamped in gold, was the name Camelot. "Guard it with your life." He paused. "Listen, Jane, Learner wears black specs like yours, and it might be better if you don't copy him. Do you own another pair? I whipped off my frames. My vision's fine. I was trying to look brainy. A schemer, huh? You'll fit in well around here. Thanks so much, Mr. Remsen. Well, you may not thank me when you hear your meager salary, and please call me Brock. He shrugged. The theater's casual, Jane. We mostly use first names. A short, sallow, middle-aged man bellowed, Edmund, dear boy, will you join us? The guy wore a paisley ascot and spoke with a slight German accent. Right away, Fritz, Brock replied, confirming that the speaker was the composer, Frederick Lowe. My new boss grinned and waved me toward the door. I threaded my way through the gypsies, wondering which of them would make the cut. After leaving the building, I floated to the corner of 8th Avenue. Cabs honked and pedestrians circled around me, and when I smelled pretzels warming on a cart, my stomach growled. But I headed uptown, eager to hear my employment details. Later on, I'd call my uncle and report my news. Maybe I'd send him a bottle of 86 proof Old Forester, his favorite bourbon. Without Max's help, Brock never would have seen me. I knew because I'd sent Remsen 3 chirpy letters that he'd ignored. But against all odds, I'd landed a real backstage job, which might disturb my parents since they felt it was offbeat to work in theater. And perhaps their opinion made sense in a family that regarded the honorable Maxwell Conroy as its black sheep. Instead of becoming a doctor like my grandfather and father, he'd made the Navy his career, which didn't seem unconventional to me. As I strolled north, sharing the sidewalk with workers in search of lunch, I thought about my family. I was a middle child who'd grown up with 2 pleaser siblings, an older sister, Alice, a housewife and rabid junior leaguer, and a younger brother, Brendan, a medical student at Georgetown. Sadly, I had never found common ground with either of them, yet I'd somehow inherited my uncle's fierce streak of independence. As I passed a market with street front shelves of lush fruits and vegetables, I decided I'd ripened as a person during my salad days in New York. Smiling at my reflection in a deli window, I felt ready for the challenges of Camelot, believing my Gal Friday job, lowly as Brock Remsen had made it sound, would eventually lead to the career I wanted. That's it for now.
For now, indeed, that's the key term here. Thank you so much, Susan.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think sorry, I guess I'm struck speechless here. I keep tripping over my words, but yeah, I just want to say, there's such a quickness and such a wit to the way that your writing flows that it really keeps you turning pages and wanting to find out what happened. And it's really easy to forget that this is based on real events, it really does feel just so, original and fresh and new. But I think that just adds another layer of interest to it. So again, thank you so much, Susan.
Oh, thank you.
Of course. Our final reader for today is Vincent J. Tomeo. Vincent has recited his poetry across the United States and throughout Europe, Africa, and Asia. His book, My Cemetery Friends, A Garden of Encounters at Mount St. Mary in Queens, New York, from Atmosphere Press in 2020, won honorable mention in the UNT Rilke Prize, and his poem, A View from a Tower in Calabria, Italy, was sculpted into marble in Italy. Vincent was awarded the Best Overall Free Verse by United Poets Laureate International and World Congress of Poets in Bangkok, Thailand, for his poem, I Visited the Grave of Marine Michael D. Glover. Vincent is also an archivist, historian, and community activist. Visit his website to learn more at www.vincentjtomeo.com. In his own challenging times, Vincent chose humor. During the COVID-19 pandemic, Vincent was fighting his own battle with bladder cancer and sought out beauty and laughter to help him arrive at a state of contentment and peace. The humor worked its charm, resulting in a treasure chest of joy and a healthy prognosis, and thus the usefulness of Hippopotamus highlights the humor in the everyday. And now, Vincent, I'd like to welcome you to share some poetry from your collection. You can go ahead and unmute and begin your reading. Oh, Vincent, it's at the bottom of the screen. If you look to the bottom left, there should be a
I
microphone
got
button,
it.
and
Got
there
it?
you are. Yeah.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Susan, nice job. You belong in Broadway. I wish everyone good health. And yes, during the pandemic, I was dealing with the pandemic and cancer, and I chose humor to help me get through. Because in my opinion, humor is the best medicine. And so I started with a piece of paper, didn't know where I was going to go. And somehow I thought of Walt Disney and the Fantasia and the hippos dancing. And so hence I came up with my book, The Usefulness of Hippopotamus, a humorous chapbook for trying times, because I chose not to get into a funk, and I was going to fight this thing, both the pandemic and the cancer, through positive thinking and through humor. And it helped me get through. It really did. I remember Nurse Poe said to me, Mr. Tomeo, we have to do these procedures and they're going to hurt. So I know you're a poet, so just spout out a poem. And I did, and it was right. It really did help, because by the time I was finished with my poem, the procedure was over. So anyway, I'm very happy. I'm cancer-free so far, so good. And to that end, when I was ill, when going through the treatment, I sat down and I decided to use humor. And so I wrote my book. As I was thinking of Fantasia and saw the hippos dancing, I start laughing. And okay, so I'm going to read. And I started with a blank piece of paper, and I said, well, what should I write? What do I have to say? So I looked at the very mundane things of everyday life, and I said, well, you know what? I'm going to make them come alive. And that's what I did. Charging a cell phone. My son visited me in the hospital. The whole time he was on his cell phone. I was on life support, struggling to breathe, survive. His phone was losing its charge, so he pulled the plug to charge his cell phone. Tomorrow, there will be a virtual funeral. Of course, that's not true. But let me tell you a story. I submitted, I'm so sure every writer goes through this. I submitted several poems and they were rejected. And all I got back was a paperclip. So I got so angry, I had the paperclip framed, you see, right? And I wrote this poem, and then they published it. And this is what I wrote. Paperclip exchange, strip number 4. My poetry submission was never returned. All I received back from an editor was a paperclip. I had the paperclip bronzed. It is now on display in a gilded 14th century Baroque frame, trapped between 2 acid-free pieces of clear glass, plexiglass, secured on archival matte board with beveled edges painted in white pate. It now has submission powers. It serves to remind all who submit poetry that others came first. Others will come after. I may be rejected. I may only have a bronzed paperclip. I may be accepted. Now, before I submit, I think of trees. I burn vanilla incense, recite the rejection chant. Thank you for showing an interest. Sorry, not right for us. The submission period is between August 1 and November 1. Try us again. Please consider this poem for publication. And they did. So they did publish it. And I got the paper clip back too. So, okay, now, as I said, I looked at everything, every mundane things and everything around me. And I said, well, gee, I have a lot to write about. So I'll start with, I read my poems to my dog. Only Rex will give me all the time I need. Rex sits attentively, wiggles his tail when a poem rhymes, barks, growls at Gothic poetry, howls at a slam. His ears rise. When he does not understand, Rex nods his head. When moved, and after my reading, Rex touches me with his cold nose and licks my salty arm. I'm not going to answer it.
From FT, Ticonderoga.
Oh, well. How do I do it? Oh, sorry. Pick up, slam down. Okay, next one. My high tea with my dog, Grandma. Let me just say that my grandmother had 5 dogs. She loved dogs. She was eccentric, and I loved her dearly. She always used to say, when I die, I'm coming back as a dog. When Grandma became ill, she gave everyone in the family a dog. But my mother refused because my mother was raising 4 boys. And she said to Grandma, I have no time for your nonsense. And she didn't accept the dog. And I said to Mama, Mama, Grandma always said she was coming back as a dog. I was only 9 years old. That was it. We kept the dog. We named it Grandma. So, high tea with my dog, Grandma. I served Grandma high tea. She just ate the scones. I spoke of the wall. She put her head in her paws. I spoke of North Korea. She rolled over. I spoke of my mother-in-law. She got up and walked away. I could hear her howl. Perhaps it was the echinacea tea. Okay. Now, I was deciding, what am I going to write about? And I'm looking around and I said, I have so many things to write about. And so I made the picture frames on the wall come alive. And I see you have many, many pictures. I like your typewriter, by the way. That's nice. Anyway, breaking out of the frame. The pictures on my wall spread rumors and rebelled. Glass, plastic, wood, and metal littered every room, shattered, slivers, scattered as pictures came alive. A self-portrait of Pablo Picasso roamed freely, whispered into the ear of a girl with a purple earring. The boy in a torn hat was up to mischief. Escaping a Frederick Remington, Native Americans on horseback galloped through the hallways, up and up the stairs looking for buffalo. Huddling in the dining room, workers from Coronas, Tiffany foundries were not amused. Abstract Korean paintings danced on the kitchen table and onto the floor looking for kimchi. African masks were in shock, laying on the living room carpet, chanting. As my ancestors crawl out of picture frames and roamed around the house like mummies in search of scissors. Soon all went into the garden to smoke a peace pipe. Seems the new treatment for multiple sclerosis using marijuana works wonders for pain, as poetry danced in my head and boats sailed up the walls into moonbeams. Refrigerator. A revolution started when garlic spread rumors. The very thought of being blended into puree was just too much. Fear overcame all the inhabitants. Heard a noise coming from my refrigerator. Opened the door, saw leftover. I saw leftovers revolting against unopened plastic bags of fresh produce. Spinach slapped spaghetti in the face. red beets overturned, applesauce turned orange, eggs scrambled for dear life, leftover pizza screamed, eat me cold, asparagus fainted, Robitussin cough syrup taken with amantadine has a strange effect on me. Okay. Let's eat grandma. I was wearing a t-shirt. Its graphics read, let's eat grandma. Let's eat, comma, grandma. Commas save lives. I was passing a senior citizen center when an elderly lady yelled, look what this generation is up to now. Sonny, what is this world coming to? What is wrong with your generation? Elsa, look what he's wearing. Ladies, calm down, stop. Read what the t-shirt states. I cannot see. What does it say? What did he say? What? They put their glasses on and started and stared. 1 minute later, we all were laughing. Oh, okay. Toasted. I saw a cockroach crawl into the grating on my toaster boiler oven. I turned it on. Hundreds of little legs scattered in flames. Then all movement stopped. I smelled something cooking. I lost my appetite. Sorry. That's a New York thing, if you live in New York, anyway. Now, the whole reason why I wrote this book was the first poem that I wrote, The Usefulness of Hippopotamus. Blubber in water, whose ears with its petite feet, funny little stubs, 4 legs, 4 feet, a commanding, pompous size, roaming the river. Its tiny, humorous ears wave and flutter, a wonder. It hears at all as it waddles, wiggles in mud, dunking, while taking in the sun to catch a million rays. It becomes a dining room table for birds and other living things. Here it comes out of the water to graze, eating the grass, dropping its dung for other beasts to munch. This is lunch. Paving a route, creating streams, roads for other animals to navigate their way. Things my mother would say or ask as I got older. You should always make sure your underwear is clean. You know, if you go to the hospital, did you meet someone yet? Are you dating? Are you eating enough? Why don't you talk to me? Nothing to say? Why don't you get along with your brothers? When the fuller brush man comes, do not answer the door. We have no money. When I am gone, you will see. You will be sorry. Are you dating? When will I have grandchildren? When I die, make sure I am buried with my slippers on. My feet are always cold. Did you eat? Do not tell your uncle you did not eat. Do not tell your uncle we have no money. Is everything okay? Will I see you married? Ma, please. I love my mother. She was so dear. You know, when I graduated from NYU and I'm walking across the stage, and they call my name and walking across the stage, and all of a sudden my mother screams, "That's my son." Oh God, I was so embarrassed. And the whole auditorium started clapping. Now, 35 years, when I think about it, I'm touched my heart. And what a wonderful, wonderful person she was. An elegant lady. and this is true, this actually happened. Dressed so fine in a burgundy silk gown, wearing a triple strand necklace of Japanese off-white pearls. She lived in penthouse number 3. I lived in the sub-basement next door. She would pass me by like a soul departing a dead body. She did not see me one day while I was sunbathing on the roof, as she passed a putrid public telephone. She gingerly placed her fingers in the coin slot machine, in the coin return slot, looking for a quarter. Now, this actually happened, all right, in Tami, Morocco, right, 2018, when I was there. Goats up a tree. And I do not smoke marijuana. Between Marrakesh, goats are precariously perched on branches, surprised to see, hopping, climbing, jumping. Incredible. It is Christmas in Morocco. So surreal to see such a sight. 4 legs up a tree, munching, scrambling up trunks for the fruit of the agar trees. Sure-footed goats float in the breeze, swaying mid leaves in the sunlight. Oh, the shadows they cast in the midday sun. To goats, trees are the answer. Incredible comic relief to view. Quiet, please. Gawking at goats up a tree wearing leaves. Toasted. I saw a cockroach. Did I read this? Did I read this one? I did. Okay, sorry. Let me see. Oh, well, this one's a little risque. Is that okay? Or you tell me.
We're actually reaching about the end of the reading time,
Okay.
Vincent, so I'd love to be able to move to the Q&A at this point.
I hope I got you to laugh. Good.
I think there's definitely been some humor thus far as it is. So,
Okay.
I mean, I love how you shared those anecdotes too in between, especially about your mother. So thank you so much, Vincent.
You're very welcome.
Of course. And it's about this time we have around 10 minutes for our audience Q&A. So if anyone has a question for one or more of our authors, including authors, if you have questions for one another, go ahead and type it in the chat and I will make sure it gets asked. I wanted to start off with a question for all 3 of you, actually. And this question is, the theme of this event is, of course, cultural impacts, but I want to ask each of you, what have you learned about yourself through the process of writing these books, even as you're writing about these broader topics? Maybe Amy, if you want to start us off.
Sure. What have I learned about myself? Well, I think first of all, I really started learning about this tradition as an outsider looking in. And I don't know that it was really my intent to become an insider in any way. I think I just intended to be an embedded reporter and write what I saw. And you know, what I discovered about myself was that I was very attracted to the depth of this tradition and how much it has been sustained and loved by women who, you know, care for their families by being the tradition keepers. And so I think what I learned about myself was that I don't know, I guess just that I could become a part of something that was so foreign to me, and that the effort of doing so was so satisfying, to not judge it and just go with it and then become a part of it. You know, that's a good lesson for today, I think. So yeah, I guess I don't know that I answered your question, but that was the surprise of the journey for me.
definitely. And I totally agree. I think that's something a lot of people could benefit from doing. So, yeah, Susan, if you want to continue the conversation, what is something you learned about yourself through the process of writing your novel? Let's see. Susan, it's possible you might still be muted.
There we go. Can you hear me? As I was
Yes.
writing the novel, I realized how much I missed the theater. I had worked in the theater as a young person, and this allowed me to return, but in a completely different capacity. Because when I worked in the theater, I was a publicist, a front of house person, and this allowed me to go backstage and really think about what it would have been like to be backstage working on anything. I never was a backstage person. I have to say that I also realized how very important it is to me when I'm researching to be able to go to the spot if possible. Because I'll tell everybody, and this is ridiculous, but I must have interviewed 10 people to get information about the Boston Schubert, which is a maze. It's a small 1910 house in Boston, very famous, where Camelot, of course, tried out. After interviewing 10 people on the phone, 10, honestly, I still could not get it. I finally, when the book was finished last summer, went to Boston. They allowed me to go backstage and poke around, and I mean, really see everything. And that was vital. Then I could go back and rewrite the Boston section, and then it made sense to me, and that's important. I also think
Definitely.
Camelot is part of our larger discussion because it's been around for so long. It was linked to the Kennedys. Now I think it's a little bit unlinked. I think that there's going to be Camelot forever. I think it's a musical that will be redone and redone.
That really interesting staying power for sure, and now kind of translating it
Definitely,
into different media.
definitely.
Um, Vincent, wanting to hear from you as well. What have you learned about yourself through the process of writing your poetry collection?
That I'm stronger than I thought I was. Um, Cancer changes everything. It changes the way you think. And when I realized that I had cancer, I said, okay, I will face this like every other battle. And I felt uh, it is important to have humor in your life and to laugh and to see the beauty all around you. I decided there were a few people that were too negative and what I considered tuning forks and train wrecks. So I decided to socially distance myself from the negativity and think positive because that helped me through. And I sat down confronting both the pandemic and cancer, and I wrote this book, The Usefulness of Hippopotamus. And how did I come up with that title? I thought of Fantasia and the dancing hippos, and that made me chuckle. So my book was born as a result of that. Is there anything else?
Yeah, definitely. We had a anonymous question come in.
Yes,
This
good.
is a question saying, I love how Vincent is talking about why he named his book. So I wanted to ask Amy and Susan, how did the two of you land on your book titles as well? Susan, do you want to kick us off with this one?
I really do, because I have a niece, Kirsten, and I think she's in the audience right now. I had several titles for my book that did not quite work. And Kirsten is also a writer and a brilliant woman, and she came up with the title. And the reason she came up with it was she said, this is Jane's book, and it's Jane's seat at the round table. These guys all have seats, including the male protagonist, Bryce. He's a knight. He's going to sit at the round table. But this time, it's Jane's turn. So she's got the one more seat at the round table, and that's where the title came from. And thank you, Kirsten. She's smarter than I am about titles, that's for sure.
Well, they can be very vexing. So it's great that you've got someone in your life to help with that.
Can I just say that the original title was A Fleeting Wisp of Glory, which is part of a lyric, but various friends of mine, various friends who are writers said, unless you were really familiar with Camelot, you were never going to get that. I needed to be more specific. So Kirsten came up with it.
Gotcha. Yeah. All right. I love hearing about that process too, navigating from one title to another and such. Amy, also asking to you, how did you land on the title Momentous instead of perhaps some other play on a word?
Right. So my working title originally was Mum's the Word. And a lot of people actually suggested that to me. But the more I spoke with people outside of the state of Texas, I really was reminded that mum isn't the word for them at all. Like there's no connection between the word mum and its origin word, which is chrysanthemum, in the context of what I'm writing about. And then for my friends from the UK and elsewhere, the word mum also means it is mom. And so I was concerned that maybe for those readers with that background, they might think that the book was specifically about mothers. So I just decided I needed a word that incorporated the word mom, and I couldn't find one, so I made it up. And I changed the word momentous into momentous, and then I realized that was exactly what I wanted to say. So in the first sort of the beginning of my book, I have a definition because, when you make up a word, you ought to at least write a dictionary entry for it, should Webster's be interested in adding it. So the definition of momentous is, one, derived from momentous, which is of great importance or significance, especially in its bearing on the future. And two, a complex portmanteau suggesting that what the mums meant to us was in fact momentous.
Yeah, definitely. It's like this kind of almost etymological sort of pathway that you're taking. I love it.
And just real quickly, I'll say that once I made up one word, I couldn't stop. So throughout the book, I changed the term entrepreneur to mumtrepreneur to describe those small businesses, almost entirely women owned, like probably tens of thousands across the state of Texas who are involved in making mums. So I'm just going to keep making up words until somebody tells me to stop.
Oh yeah, the business of punning is a slippery slope. So all right, so we have one more question. This is for all three of you. What is your next project? Vincent, I'd love to hear from you about what's up and coming in your writing career, writing life.
I never know where I'm going to go. I start with a blank piece of paper and off I go. So I can't tell you right now. However, I write a lot of short stories, and so who knows? Maybe I might put my memoir together and do that. I'm not sure. So,
Yeah, I feel like a collection of, anecdotes and stories like that about your life, just from what we've heard today, I think would be really fascinating. So
you don't know
definitely.
half of it. I've traveled all over the world. I'm very, very fortunate. I was a teacher for 39 years, and there are stories I could tell you from my teaching experience, and that really gave me purpose. I loved every minute of teaching. And I love traveling. My favorite place in the world has to be, well, I think Peru, and I found India fascinating. Turkey. I could go Africa, African safaris. I love nature. I love the animals. I just love life, and I'm so happy to be alive, and dealing with cancer has taught me that take every moment and cherish it and enjoy. And that's why I don't bother with people that are negative and mean, because I don't like those kind of people. I don't want to dislike anyone, but in a world of flowers, there's always a weed, and for some people, we do not have a need. So I keep my distance socially. So love and peace and flowers. and I'm not a hit.
Mhm. Well, we'll have to be on the lookout for that next project.
Okay.
Susan, I know you mentioned we mentioned earlier, you've got your third book on in the works. Did you want to talk about your next project coming up?
Sure. I wrote a novel. It's actually finished about the American sharpshooter Annie Oakley.
Oh,
In my experience, I found readers, agents in particular, really wanted Annie to be more like Calamity Jane. Calamity Jane being a cross-dressing, hard-talking, cursing Western woman. Annie Oakley is really a very refined Victorian lady. In fact, she wanted to be a lady more than a shooter. So when she was finished working in Buffalo Bill's famous ring in Buffalo Bill's Wild West, she went back to her tent to embroider. Now, this is not everyone's idea of Annie, but this is the real Annie. And her main conflict was really with Buffalo Bill, not with Frank Butler, whom she married. And if you've ever seen the musical Annie, Get Your Gun, it's completely wrong. So I am finished with that book, and I just want to say how much I've enjoyed hearing Amy and Vincent read and talk about their work. I really feel like I learned so much today. I'm really inspired to buy your books. And thank you so much for sharing the stage with me. I'm delighted. Vincent, I feel the same as you. And I also used my Camelot book to get through the pandemic. I wrote it during the pandemic, and I actually felt guilty because I was so happy and everyone else was so miserable. I was having the time of my life. And it's still something that's very close to my heart. And Amy, I really learned a lot from you too. I found your work very poignant, and thank you. Thank you, Vincent and Amy.
I'm going to say that, ladies, you are a breath of fresh air, a beacon of light in a world of emotional pygmies. Thank you.
Gosh.
Yeah.
I don't really want to say anything else. I really wish we could just end on that thought, but but I am dying to answer this question. So also I just want to share my gratitude to Vincent and Susan and Hala and Atmosphere Press. Having written this is my first book, and I'm everything I do is the first time, first book, first Zoom chat with nice people across the world, first everything. And so thank you for helping me understand how high the bar can be. And now I don't want to settle for anything less. So I just appreciate that so much. In terms of my next project, I feel kind of weird because I want to be cagey about it, because I don't know how long it's going to take me. I don't know. It took like 8 years to write this one, and I really hope it doesn't take me 8 years to write the next one. But at least in terms of my process, I'm going to repeat myself because I learned a lot from doing Momentous, and the way I started with it was through the photography, which led me to the storytelling. And so I stumbled through that the first time to some degree. And so I want to do it again, at least one more time, to see with some, knowledge and skills that I learned from the first book. So the second book will be very similar in that it's an exploration of photography and narratives, and it's about a tradition that hides in plain sight in the United States. Although this one is not specifically about Texas. And I guess the only other hint I really want to give is I have to go to all 50 states to do it. And I'm going to do it. So, and I have done it actually. So they're all in my camera and on my external hard drive. And it's just a matter of rooting through the pictures and tying it together with the narrative. So Atmosphere Press, hang in there. In another 7 to 8 years, I'll be calling you.
Oh yeah, and we're excited about it.
Yeah, and I really have to also thank all the editors that supported me along the way. Both those editors who I found through other authors. Authors are very generous souls who want to share all their goodness with each other. And then BE and the other editors at Atmosphere Press who believed in the book. I mean, having somebody believe in your project, no matter whether it's a book or anything else you do in life that matters to you, it's huge. So thanks also to Atmosphere Press for that.
And thank you to all three of you just being here with us today, sharing your books, but also your thoughts, your processes, your responses to these questions. Thank you for all of that to Amy, Vincent, and Susan for your generosity today.
Well, thank
And
you,
thank you.
Hala. Thank you.
Of course, it's my pleasure. And of course, thank you to the audience, for celebrating with us and being here to participate with all of this.
I would
Don't
like to
forget that.
thank
Oh,
Amy
go
and
ahead.
Susan, and I'm going to read their books and maybe write a critique.
Thank you. We all need that.
Okay.
So yeah, don't forget that you can also, read all 3 of these books, leave your own reviews. You can order Momentous, The Usefulness of Hippopotamus, and One More Seat at the Round Table from the links in the chat. And please also consider checking out atmospherepress.com to browse our new and forthcoming releases, to sign up for our email newsletter, and to submit a book manuscript of your own. You can feel free to submit your work to books@atmospherepress.com and let us know that you attended today's event. But until then, we'll look forward to hearing from you. And that's it. Have a great rest of your week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.